Welcome to the channel, The Book Mind. Today we're taking a deep dive into a book that really shook things up in the self-help world. It challenged a lot of standard ideas about happiness, success, you name it. We're talking, of course, about Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck, and we'll be using the author's own summary to really unpack the core ideas behind why this book became such a massive phenomenon.
Yeah, absolutely. Our goal today is really to pull out the most, let's say, potent insights from Manson's philosophy, which is, well, it's pretty contrarian. And just to be clear, this isn't about apathy, right? It's not about just not caring about anything. It's more about a radical rethinking of what we actually choose to prioritize. It challenges so many of those ingrained ideas we have about what a good life even looks like.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Most self-help books, they promise the easy path, get happy, get rich, perfect life, all that. But Manson starts chapter 1, titled Don't Try, totally differently. He leads with Charles Bukowski, the writer. Super successful, but by all accounts, kind of a mess. A drunk, prison time, drug issues. Why start there? Seems like the opposite of a role model.
Well, that's exactly the point, I think. Bukowski is this deliberate counterexample. He's not Steve Jobs. He's not Elon Musk. Manson uses him to show, look, you can achieve conventional success, maybe even despite yourself. It immediately undermines those neat definitions of a good or desirable life. Right from page 1, he's signaling, we're going to question everything you think you know about success.
Okay, yeah, that definitely grabs your attention.
Yeah.
And it leads straight into a really foundational concept, the backwards law. What is that exactly? How does it, flip our thinking?
The backwards law. Manson borrows it from Ellen Watts, essentially. It states that the more you pursue a positive experience, the more negative the experience becomes. And conversely, accepting a negative experience is, in itself, a positive experience. Think about it like this, right? The more desperately you want to be rich, the poorer and more lacking you feel no matter your bank account. Or the more you chase happiness, the more maybe lonely or unfulfilled you end up feeling. It's paradoxical. It basically argues that leaning into the negative, acknowledging it, is the real path to genuine positivity, letting go of that desperate need.
So it's not about indifference then, not giving a fuck about anything.
Yeah.
Because that's how some people take it.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. That's the common misunderstanding. Manson is very clear on this with what he calls the 3 subtleties. First, not giving a fuck isn't indifference. He says indifference is kind of impossible anyway. You always care about something. It means being comfortable with being different, comfortable with things not always going your way. The key is deciding to care about only a few really important things. Then the small stuff, the annoyances, they just don't bother you as much.
Okay, that makes sense. What's the second subtlety?
The second one is to not give a fuck about adversity, you first have to give a fuck about something more important than that adversity. So if you're constantly worried about, say, what people think or trivial things, Manson suggests maybe it's because you lack something more meaningful to focus your energy on, something bigger to care about.
Wow. Yeah, that hits home. Okay, and the third subtlety.
The third one is simple but powerful. You are always choosing what to give a fuck about. It's always a choice. And this idea, this thread of choice and responsibility, it comes back again and again throughout the book. It's really central.
Okay, so if don't try challenges success, then chapter 2 really goes for the jugular of the self-help industry, right? Happiness is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that sounds totally counterintuitive. How does he even justify that?
It is a direct challenge. He brings in the Buddha's concept of dukkha, often translated as suffering, but it's maybe more like inherent dissatisfaction or unease. And he links this to evolution. Think about it. An animal that was always perfectly happy and content, it probably wouldn't survive very long. Our negative emotions, anxiety, dissatisfaction, even anger, they're useful signals. They evolved for a reason. They're not bugs. They're features we're supposed to listen to, not suppress. So this modern idea that we should just feel good all the time, Manson says that's completely misguided. It goes against our nature.
Yeah, it reminds me of that concept, the hedonic treadmill, where we kind of adapt to good things and always return to a baseline level of happiness.
Exactly. Like Manson's example with wanting a boat. Okay, you get the boat. You're thrilled for, a week. Then you start worrying about docking fees, maintenance. Then you need friends to go out on the boat. Then, I don't know, someone falls overboard. You need the Coast Guard. It's just this constant chase. Happiness becomes this carrot that's always just out of reach.
So if happiness is a problem, what are we supposed to do? What's the takeaway?
Well, Manson flips it. He argues that happiness doesn't come from avoiding problems. It comes from solving problems. So the secret isn't to have no problems, because that's impossible. It's to find problems you actually want to have. Problems you, dare I say, enjoy solving. And this leads straight to that pivotal idea: choose your struggle.
Mhm.
The question isn't, what joy do I want? It's, what pain am I willing to sustain? What am I willing to struggle for?
Huh.
That question, he argues, is a much better predictor of how your life turns out. It's about actively choosing the difficulties that align with your values.
Choosing your struggle. That really makes you think about entitlement, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Which leads perfectly into Chapter 3, You Are Not Special.
Mm-hmm.
He starts this one with a story about a con man, Jimmy. What's Jimmy's role here?
Jimmy is basically the poster child for entitlement. Manson defines entitlement as feeling you deserve happiness or good things without actually sacrificing or working for them. And he points out two main forms. There's the grandiose narcissism, I'm amazing, the rules don't apply to me, I deserve special treatment. And then there's victim narcissism, which is more like, my life sucks so badly, I'm such a victim, therefore I deserve special treatment. Both, he says, are delusional, they're self-absorbed, and ultimately pretty destructive.
And he really pins a lot of this on modern culture, especially social media.
Oh, absolutely. He argues it constantly pushes this narrative that everyone has to be extraordinary, unique, special. It creates these unhealthy, frankly delusional expectations that the world owes us something just for showing up. His metaphors are pretty blunt here. He calls all that your amazing stuff jerking off your ego. Says it's like empty calories for the soul, a Big Mac for your heart and brain. Feels good in the moment, but offers zero real substance.
Ouch. So what's the antidote? If the Big Mac is bad, what should we be consuming?
He calls it eating your veggies, basically accepting the plain, maybe boring truths of life. Things like your actions in the grand scheme of things probably don't matter that much. Most of your life will likely be pretty average, pretty mundane, and crucially, he says, that's okay. Actually, it's more than okay. Accepting this, even though it might bruise the ego initially, is what connects you back to reality. And paradoxically, he claims, it makes you feel more potent, more alive.
Okay, definitely some challenging ideas there. If you're finding this deep dive compelling, just a reminder to like and follow the Book Mind channel.
So moving on, Chapter 4, The Value of Suffering. Here the focus shifts a bit. It's less about why we should struggle and more about what is actually worth struggling for. Our values. And he opens with this incredible story, almost unbelievable, of Hiru Onoda, the Japanese soldier, who kept fighting World War II in the Philippines for nearly 30 years because nobody told him the war had ended.
Yeah, that story is wild. What's really striking is his discipline, his motivations, things we normally admire, were totally dedicated to a goal that didn't even exist anymore. How does Manson use that?
Right. He was, as Manson puts it, like Don Quixote chasing windmills. It's a powerful illustration that it doesn't matter how disciplined or motivated you are, if your underlying value or goal is flawed, you're fucked, to use Manson's word. This leads him to lay out principles for good versus bad values. Good values are reality-based, they're socially constructive, and they're immediate and controllable. Things like honesty, creativity, humility. Bad values, conversely, tend to be superstitious, socially destructive, or outside our direct control. Things like being popular, always being right, chasing constant pleasure.
That distinction is really helpful. It clarifies why what we choose to care about matters so much, which takes us right into Chapter 5. You are always choosing. Manson apparently calls this one of the most important chapters. He uses this thought experiment. Running a marathon. Scenario 1. A mafia boss forces you, threatens your family. Scenario 2. You train for months and choose to run it. The physical pain, Manson says, is identical.
So the question becomes, what's the difference? If the pain is the same, it's the perception that you chose the struggle. That's the key difference. When we feel like we've chosen our problems, our difficulties, they become meaningful, bearable, even empowering sometimes. But when problems feel forced upon us, we feel like victims, powerless. Manson's big epiphany here is that actually you are always choosing your struggle, whether you consciously realize it or not. You're always choosing how you interpret and respond to events.
Okay, but what about things that genuinely aren't our fault? Like you get a serious illness or something terrible happens completely outside your control. How does choice fit in there?
Yeah, that's a crucial point, and Manson addresses it directly. He says we often confuse responsibility with fault. Getting cancer, absolutely not your fault. But choosing how you respond to it, how you manage it, that is your responsibility. Or his example, if a baby is suddenly left on your doorstep, not your fault at all, but now dealing with the situation, that's your responsibility. Realizing you always have a choice, even if the choice is simply how you frame the experience or what values you apply to it, that shift in perspective is incredibly empowering. It moves you from victim to agent.
Responsibility versus fault. That's a really powerful distinction. Okay, Chapter 6. Why you are wrong about everything, but so am I. Mason asks us to think about how ridiculous our current beliefs might seem in, say, 20 years or 500 years. And he says this is actually a good thing. Why?
Because it means you've grown. If you don't look back and cringe a little at your past self, your past beliefs, have you really learned anything? He even talks about his own old writing and how embarrassing he finds some of it now, but he sees that as a positive sign of progress. Then he really digs into the dangers of being too certain. He tells the story about a cyberstalker who had this unbelievable certainty despite having, completely batshit crazy beliefs. Certainty, he warns, can be a trap. It closes you off.
So the key is embracing uncertainty, being okay with not knowing everything.
Absolutely. Uncertainty opens up space for learning, for growth. It protects us from extremism and dogma. It even improves our relationships because it fosters humility. He suggests asking yourself 3 questions regularly. 1, what if I'm wrong? 2, what would it mean if I were wrong? And 3, would being wrong create a better problem or a worse problem than my current one? He also introduces Manson's law of avoidance. The more something threatens your identity, the more you'll live on dealing with it. So define yourself loosely.
Okay. Chapter 7, Failure is the Way Forward. This sounds a bit more like traditional self-help, maybe? But I assume Manson puts his own spin on it.
Oh, for sure. It fits perfectly with his overall theme. Accept the negative, choose the struggle. Failure is just part of that. He tells stories about Picasso, how many failures were behind his successes, and he introduces the do something principle. This actually came from his high school math teacher, a Mr. Packwood. It connects failure, uncertainty, and sacrifice as catalysts for success.
Right, Mr. Packwood's advice, if you don't know what to do, just rewrite the problem. How did that simple math advice become this, universal life principle for Manson?
It's about breaking inertia, taking the smallest possible step forward. Whether it was a tricky math problem, or later writing a paper, or even facing social anxiety, Manson found that just doing something, anything, no matter how small, created momentum. That action led to the next action, and eventually that action sparked inspiration and motivation. So the huge insight here is, action isn't just the effect of motivation, it's often the cause of it. You don't wait to feel motivated, you act first, and the motivation follows.
Action leads motivation. Got it. Okay, Chapter 8, The Importance of Saying No. This seems like a logical next step from choosing your values, right?
It follows perfectly. If you're choosing what to give a fuck about, you inherently have to choose what not to give a fuck about. He argues that a truly healthy relationship, whether romantic or otherwise, is one where both people feel comfortable saying no and hearing no without it causing a huge drama. He even says rejection makes your life better, because to genuinely value X, you have to reject not X. If you can't say no, if you try to please everyone or keep all options open, you end up standing for nothing. You struggle to prioritize, and you feel scattered.
And he talks about the hidden freedom of commitment. That sounds like another paradox.
It does, doesn't it? Especially today, maybe. There's this tendency to avoid commitment in relationships, careers, locations, to keep options open, to avoid missing out. FOMO, right. But Manson argues that truly committing, going deep on a few things you genuinely care about, actually creates a different kind of freedom, an inner freedom. You're liberated from the constant distraction of infinite possibilities, the endless need for external validation. You can finally just focus and invest in what truly matters to you.
Okay, that brings us to the final chapter, Chapter 9. And Manson apparently says it's his favorite. And then you die. He shares a very personal story about a friend dying tragically when he was young, and how that changed him. Why is facing death so central here?
It's fascinating. Manson argues that confronting our own mortality, really grappling with the fact that our time is limited, is the ultimate filter. It's the thing that forces clarity on what truly matters, on what is actually worth giving a fuck about. He mentions the Stoics, their practice of memento mori, remembering death, as a way to cultivate perspective and prioritize life. Connecting with the reality of death makes everything else fall into place.
He even talks about his personal fetish for walking near cliff edges, like at the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa. Not because he's suicidal, but to confront that fear.
Exactly. It's about forcing that confrontation. What if I did slip? What would I regret? What truly matters right now? That intense introspection, facing the void. He finds it intoxicating because it distills life down to its essence. And really, he ties everything from the book, tolerating negative experiences, taking responsibility, embracing uncertainty, accepting failure, saying no, he ties it all back to this confrontation with death. Death becomes the backdrop against which all meaningful values are illuminated. It's the ultimate perspective giver.
So, wrapping this all up, what's the big picture takeaway for you, the listener? Manson's deep dive really pushes us to rethink, almost everything. Happiness, success, failure, even death. It's this powerful call to understand that a good life isn't about avoiding pain or chasing constant highs. It's about choosing your struggles wisely, embracing the whole messy, difficult, wonderful spectrum of what it means to be human.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're thinking about what pain you're genuinely willing to endure for something meaningful, or how maybe embracing uncertainty and taking more responsibility could change things for you, this book offers a really provocative and frankly refreshing alternative to a lot of the usual self-help fluff. It shifts the focus from just wanting good things to being willing to struggle for them.
Absolutely. Before we sign off, if you enjoyed this discussion, please do like and follow the Bookmind channel for more deep dives into thought-provoking books and ideas.
And maybe take a moment to consider how might consciously choosing your struggles and maybe even embracing some of life's inherent negativity paradoxically lead you to a more meaningful, more authentic, and ultimately maybe even a more positive existence. Something to think about.